Welcome to the 307th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Welcome, and thank you for listening. Today, I have a special guest, Ashland Dave from Ashland Dave Podcast. His real name is Dave Klisz. Dave was an inspiration for me to start this podcast. I listened to his Ashland Dave Running in the Center of the Universe podcast when I first started listening to podcasts while I was running. And we actually got to meet probably about 10 years ago or so at the Hatfield and McCoy Marathon. And he was on crutches at the time because he had completed a 50-mile run and, as he will describe, macerated the bottom of his feet. And scared me to death, thinking that, how could anybody's feet survive on a 50-mile run? So we'll talk about that a little bit. But the main reason why I'm having Dave on the podcast, he describes himself as a middle-of-pack, nobody, mid-pack runner he always says, I'm never going to win anything. And he just loves running and loves running with his friends and the people that he runs with. But a lot of his friends recently have had heart disease to the point of stents and bypasses at young ages, in the late 40s, early 50s, despite being good runners, fast runners, as he'll describe. And so they're no slouch, just starting out running. They've been running for years, and then they have had to stop and have cardiac attention done to them, either stents or bypass. And a lot of the references that I've heard on his podcast, have talked about hereditary means. And of course, I've talked to you over the years about races, that have finish lines with donuts, or aid station with, bad choice foods, or people running to eat and not taking nutrition serious because people feel if they can out-exercise their bad eating habits. And I know a lot of us suffer from that, especially if you're running and your weight is controlled and you think you can do what you want and eat what you want and you look good on the outside, but meanwhile the inside is rusting or bad things are happening. And, it comes down to you can survive a long time, but it's how long can you actually thrive eating poorly despite running. So running might buy you a few extra years from your poor eating habit. It might help you survive a heart attack that you may not have survived. It may help you certainly come back from a heart attack if the rest of your body's in shape. But it's not a standalone cure or fix to cardiovascular disease. And Dave and I are going to talk a little bit about that. And I hope by doing this podcast that people hear Dave, every day middle-of-the-pack runner, talk about this and his friends, and realize that it's something that we all tend to struggle over and maybe try to look the other way, that nutrition is something we can ignore as long as we're exercising, or blame the lack of exercise on our health or inability to lose weight, when actually that's really, it comes back down to nutrition is the cornerstone of health. In just about anybody's opinion, but a lot of us tend to ignore it, healthcare providers especially. So it's not just about any diet. It's not just about being, having a normal body weight. It's about what kind of nutrients you're taking in, how to fuel your body to live a healthy and optimally active life until you can't live anymore. So I hope you enjoy the podcast with Dave. I certainly like catching up with him. I hope I catch up with him again in a few, or I guess less than 10 years. I hope we're both running in 10 years. I'm older than Dave, but I hope we keep running and keep running ultras. I look to him as an inspiration to do a 50-miler at some point. I guess we have one on the calendar here in a few months for January. But enjoy this podcast with Ashland Dave.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Nice to see you. How's it been? Hatfield and McCoy Marathon. God, it's got to be 10 years.
I think that was 2011 because that was when I hurt my feet.
Yes.
And I was on crutches. So,
was that your first ultra?
Not my first ultra. First 50 miler. I had done a 50K, I think the 2 months before that, but that was in the freezing cold. Well, no, a couple months. It was so cold, there's no way I would have blistered, but that was just oh gosh, just thinking back on that was crazy.
So that was a 50 miler.
Yes.
I remember that well. I mean, your feet were that. I listened to the podcast, and it's like, oh God, I've always been afraid of blisters, and you brought that fear to life for me.
Yeah, it was. I guess it was a little bit beyond blistering. It was a little bit what the doctor called me was maceration of my feet, of the skin, and then I was supposed to the Wednesday after the race, I was supposed to be at a local meeting of our board of supervisors for something that I was going to be recognized, and I couldn't go, obviously, because I couldn't even put shoes on. And then the word got back to me that I didn't show up because I got some blisters while hiking. It wasn't quite that, but okay.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I'd like to first thank you for taking time to speak with me. And again, thank you, because it's because of you that I'm doing a podcast. This will be the 307th episode.
Oh, that's awesome. I need to listen. I know that you started one. I don't know how often you get it out, but after this, I'll obviously, I'll listen to it. But that's great. I did look on your website, though, because I was talking to my wife about, because you're a cardiologist. That's a medical doctor, cardiologist.
Yes.
I remember you're the one that told me don't eat egg and bagel in the middle of your training run.
Yeah.
I didn't do it after that. I said, well, you would know best.
Yeah, I think you made me cringe one time. I was on the long run and you were talking about an ultra. I think one of your favorite things at one point was a honey bun or something like that. It might have been you.
That's me. Yeah. That's probably not good either.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the saturated fat. It's like, oh my God, but that's what intrigued me. As you know, Jeff Galloway recently had multiple stents, and he's a skinny fellow that's been running for many years. And people would think, oh, if it happens to him, it can happen to anybody, or why did it happen to him? Must be hereditary. And then I heard your last podcast with your friend, and he talked about hereditary type of things. And I think that a lot of people think that they're, oh, well, I'm probably doomed if, it's in the cards. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that, because I think that that's one thing that I would like to spread as an older runner, that you don't necessarily have to succumb to your genes, so to speak. So I thought maybe that was something we could talk a little bit about.
Yeah.
And if we just can kind of jump right in. I mean, I start listening to you, you're Ashland Dave. You describe yourself as a middle of the pack nobody.
Ordinary middle of the pack nobody.
Middle of the pack nobody that runs races. But I guess, and you always finish your podcast with the Star Spangled Banner, and you threatened early on when I was listening to your podcast, you threatened people that if they didn't finish to the end, it was a bad thing. So I have never not listened all the way through the end of the Star Spangled Banner. I'll have you know.
Cool.
But what made you, when you started, I know you're a big soccer person, your daughter played soccer. What made you turn into, distance running or running in general?
I remember my first running event was, I think, in 5th grade during the presidential physical fitness stuff. I don't even know if that's done anymore. But I was able to get the presidential physical fitness award. And I remember I liked doing the 600. That was the long distance event.
Yeah.
600 yards. That's not really a long run, but that was long for kids that go out sprinting. And I was good at that, and I could do the other stuff. I went on and actually I did run competitively in middle school as a cross-country runner.
Oh, wow.
And my claim to fame is that I came in 11th in the county meet, and they gave medals to the first 10. I came in 11th. And had I known that, I probably would have beat the guy that was in front of me. It wasn't that far ahead of me. And but anyway, you live and learn. High school, but I played soccer all along the same time, and I played soccer through high school, and then did a little intramural soccer in college, and then kind of did a little bit of running, but kind of went down the kind of a partying college lifestyle a little bit. Didn't really do a whole lot of exercise, and then what happened was when I was working for the police agency that I retired from a couple of years ago, I was asked to come out and play in a pickup soccer game. And that's when I realized how out of shape I was. And I went on to play in an adult soccer league after that. And then that's when I started doing more cardio, because it was almost embarrassing how I just got winded so fast. And then my dad ran the Richmond Marathon in 2005. And you may have heard me tell this story before, but I remember my mom called me or my wife on the Thursday or Friday night before the race and said, "Hey, your dad's running the marathon this weekend. You want to go out and watch?" And I said, "Dad's running a marathon? When did that happen?"
How old was he?
Let's see, that would have been 2005, and he was born in 41, so I can't do math in front of people, but whatever that is.
Yeah, so, I'm going to do this between the two of us. My mom was born in 33, so she's 88, and so that would be 8 years, so 80. He's 80 now, so...
He is 80 now, so I guess he was 60-something.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty impressive. We went out there, and the Richmond course was such that you could... be a spectator on several portions of the course and get around okay. And I just was inspired. I signed up for the following spring. I signed up for the there's a big 10K road race in Richmond called the Monument Avenue 10K. I did that on a training team. And then I did that kind of propelled me into a half marathon training team. And then I met some of the nicest people I've ever met on that training team. And we kind of put together a little grassroots group and ran Richmond that fall, 2006, and I got hooked. I've run 30 plus since then, half of them ultras. Completely. I've just loved the people you meet. You don't meet too many drug addicts on Saturday mornings in your group.
No, that's for sure. So you still do a Saturday morning group run for the most part, right?
I do. We have a name now. We're called Wolfpack. Somebody named us Wolfpack when we were running past. It's a group of 5 to 6. Everybody's over 50, and we meet at this mural that was painted in our little town in Ashland that we live in Virginia, and we meet there at 7:30. And if you want to run more than 5 or 6, you got to get up earlier and do those miles if you want before the group. If you want to finish with the group, and then we go out for coffee or some breakfast after that, and then everybody goes on for their day usually by 9 o'clock, and it's just a great way to start the weekend. They're all friends that have done, I think everybody's done at least a half marathon. There's a couple people in there that have done some ultras, and we do an interval. I mean, we had talked before this interview about the intervals. We kind of do whatever the person who wants to run the least wants to do. So in other words, we got a guy named Bob. We call him Ashland Bob. I think we did a 3-1 the other day, which is fine with me because none of us are going to win anything. And that way everybody stays together as a group. We're not the kind of group where you start out together and within 2 minutes you got 2 people that have run up ahead. The whole point is really just to kind of, guys spend the time together. We didn't miss a beat during COVID. We might have run a few feet apart. But for the most part, I think we technically were violating civil law in Virginia by running together without being related, without a mask or something.
Good for you. Good for you. I'm proud of you. Yeah, we our little group ran all through COVID here, except
Good.
I actually had to take a few days off, 8 days off to have COVID. But after that, I was.
Oh gosh, did I put you down, huh?
A little bit. No worse than any other flu bug type of deal. But with the stigma that goes through it, you had to kind of by yourself for 8 days in solitary.
Yeah.
So that was bad. But so So you run a group, so you do 3 minutes, but when you're doing your ultras back when, you used to do like you used to do like 5 minutes in one, or 25 minutes in one. How you were doing something longer, right?
I've switched it around. I ran once I accepted the run walk method for me just to participate. First of all, I don't think it puts as much impact on my knees. It probably does, but I just don't feel it as much afterwards. I ran my fastest marathon running a 25-minute run, 5-minute walk method. Mm-hmm. Of course, I'm slow, middle of the pack, nobody. People don't even know I'm at a race. Unless it's, so I ran a 4:17. That was my fastest marathon, and I ran that with that 25 and 5 interval. But I never really replicated that again. I kind of moved to I run a mile, then walk a 10th. And it's easy on the Garmin, on my watch. I can look at it. It's easy to, and that way about every 10 to 10 and a half minutes, I've got a mental break where I don't have to maintain that muscle rhythm. And I think it's helped me. I've still had a whole lot of fun. I don't think your heart rate really goes down that much. So I still think you're getting a benefit. Even when I just do a 5 miler, I'll still do that same run a mile, walk a 10th. I guess it's really technically on the second mile, you walk a 0.9, then walk a 10th. I mean, I'm still able to just enjoy the benefit of exercise as opposed to trying to go out there and kill it. I mean, I'm 52 years old. I'm not going to win anything, right?
Well, no, it's a survival thing now. Your age group, as it starts shrinking down.
This is true. My dad says he goes to races and looks around to see where the old guys are to see if he might place in his age group.
Well, I had a podcast a few months ago. I actually took one of my members' patients that 64 ran his first ever marathon, and he got third in his age group. And that was, he was. I think we were 3 from the last, but he was third in his age group. So it's like,
that's what you tell people.
There's a lot of people that are sitting on the couch that at your age that if you factor all those people in, it does make a difference.
That's true.
I wanted to just touch on this heart rate thing a little bit, since you said, it doesn't go down that much, and does it benefit you or not? And that's actually what you want it to do. Okay. Because if you run straight, you'll see as time goes on, if you start out, your heart rate's, 80, and then it starts clicking up, and it keeps going up and up and up and up. And the more you fatigue, the more, just like when I do a stress test on somebody, you start to get into that greater than 85% of your predicted maximal heart rate. That's when you start to make lactic acid. That's when you start burning all your carbohydrates. That's when you're going to start hitting the wall. So by doing the interval, you actually are letting your heart rate come down so that you can start burning fat. And you're clearing lactic acid from your system. So the reason why you're not as sore is you're actually clearing acid from your system, and you're not, you're burning less carbohydrates. So, I always tell people you got about 2,000 calories of carbohydrate in your muscles and about 200 in your liver. And when that's gone, then that's called the wall. And so if you burn all that, real quick, like, burn the match, so to speak, when people go out real fast and they're burning predominantly carbohydrates, then your body's going to say your heart rate has to come down to let you start burning fat again. And that's you're slowed down. You can think you can push it all you want. It's in your head, but it's not, it's in your blood, and you're going to slow down until it all clears through. So whatever you can do to keep your heart rate down, that's ultimately, you do better. And I played around with intervals, and, every once in a while I'll go back and I'll say, okay, let me run straight and see how fast. But, you can start to see your heart rate ticking up, and you start to slow down because your heart rate's ticking up the further you go. So I think the run walk is a great thing, especially when, like you say, you start to get a little older and you're running more for enjoyment. I was going to try I did my best marathon running it straight. And I actually won it in California International Marathon. And I actually wanted to repeat it in, I guess it would have been 2020, when they canceled out. And I wanted to do the run walk and see if I could repeat it. But I didn't really get a chance to. So I don't know, we're signed up for that marathon again this December. So I might see if I can run walk it and just to see what I can do. Yeah. I try to do it on we started doing some ultras. And it seems to me, we live down here in Flatland, Florida. And so when all the ultras we seem to pick, even though we don't seem to believe the people until we actually get there and see all the boulders that we've got to climb up. And so it's like, it has a way of, it's like, yeah, sure, my watch might say run, but it's not going to happen, It's crawl, it's crawl time, and so I haven't figured out the run walk method really in an ultra yet. It just seems to dictate it, when I have to walk.
The terrain, yeah.
So, but yeah, I've been, and we're starting to look into some races here more on the East Coast, or East, I guess. Yeah, well, I guess the East Coast. And I've kind of looked at some of the ones that I've heard you say over the years, Tennessee. I think there's one in South Carolina, Strolling Jim or something like that.
Yeah, Strolling Jim.
So I've looked at some of those that are on the radar, because traditionally we've gone out to California to run some races just because we like California, but it's so hard to get and it's so goofy out there right now, and it's it's just
right.
hard that we're starting to look around here a little bit more, so that'll be good.
Well, the Strolling Gym is it used to be put on by Gary Cantrell. He's the one that does those backyard ultras.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I think it's one of the longest ultras in the country, along with JFK.
Yeah, that's what I heard. There's a guy.
Longest running ultras. I'm sorry.
South. There's a podcast. A guy has a podcast, South. Something about ultras in the South, but he actually featured that marathon on his, and it was talking about how old it is. I have to let the door for my cat. He's starting.
Yep.
I moved my dogs over to another room so they wouldn't bark, and now the cat's having a fit. So
we just got an 8-week-old puppy on Saturday, and I'm surprised that she's not making any noise. My wife's got her in the other room.
Yeah, you made me cry during the one podcast where you're talking about the dog and taking the dog to the McDonald's to get it a hamburger.
Oh yeah, that's what you got to do.
That was
somebody
awful.
told me wants to do that, and I've only had to. Yeah, I did that with the one dog. Yeah, we went and got her 2 hamburgers, and then they went in and put her down.
Yeah, that was an awful podcast, Dave.
I have to dig that one up and listen to it.
Yeah, no, don't. You'll go to a bad place. You'll go bad place. So, you said, your knees hurt, and doctors are always telling, the doctors in the doctor lounge when I go in, they're always saying, still running, still running. And I say, yeah, aren't your knees bad? I had stopped running because my knees are bad. And of course they drift back to when they were in high school and how they hurt that's when they did all their damage, is when they were probably 130 pounds in high school. But that's what they remember, is their knees hurting. And my knees have never hurt, other than if I try to wear my shoes too long and, get a couple extra miles out of them, and then things might start to ache a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know I've got to change my shoes. But, one of the things that I wanted to, say is that a lot of this arthritis stuff that throws us older runners out. So I'm going to put you in my group now, even though you haven't made it to my age group yet. I'm in the 55 to 59. Okay. And I only have one more year in that age group. So, but nevertheless, it's actually inflammation. And it's inflammation, and largely what you eat drives inflammation. So when you eat oil and animal products, it actually, those omega-6s type of thing actually drive inflammatory compounds. And there was actually an orthopedic guy in a meeting that, put his own x-ray up of his bone-on-bone knees and said, it doesn't hurt anymore once you take the inflammation out. Your x-rays might not be pretty, but it doesn't mean that it has to hurt. And, trying to, we all go down this road of, again, I'm just getting older and things are going to hurt, and it's arthritis, and, it's back when I broke my, did whatever, play and whatever. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way but we have to train smarter and, with the run walk and eat smarter. Okay. And, the podcast that I pulled up of yours recently, well, actually, the two last podcasts that I listened to you, and they were spread out. But you've had a couple buddies have heart attacks. One had a really bad heart attack, a massive heart attack a year or so ago. And then another guy just had a bypass, and they were pretty young, younger than you, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, the one guy, Rodney, that I did some ultras with, he had a massive heart attack, and he was only, I think, mid-40s. And that was really scary. He's since moved out of the area to get closer to family. Unfortunately, I just don't have as much contact with him anymore. But the other two, Crash, the guy we call Crash because he fell on the treadmill one time in front of a bunch of people. And then the other guy, Ron, who is in my running group now, they were both thin. Ron's older than me, but Crash is younger. And he was my half marathon coach. And that was a little scary. I mean, I made some assumptions, though, about why it happened, only because I know he's real busy with his kids and they might eat through drive-thrus a lot. But I didn't really know that. I was just, it scared me because I'm like, well, gosh, he's smaller. He's probably 50 pounds lighter than I am. I don't know how much he runs now, but I know he runs fast. And, yeah, it's kind of weird.
Well, and that's it. And I know you don't know a whole lot about my practice, but I was a traditional cardiologist till about, we changed practice over about 3 years ago to more of a wellness reverse disease type practice. But it started with looking at nutrition to reverse heart disease. I have a terrible family history. My granddad died at 47. My grandmother died at 57. Everybody has diabetes. Some other people died in their early 70s. Everybody had diabetes. And so it was, and I took up running to outrun my disease basically in around, in the late 90s. And my cholesterol was still going up despite, my weight was okay. And, I toyed around with taking medication for a while and then came across this physician, Caldwell Esselstyn, out of Cleveland Clinic that basically started reversing people's disease through nutrition. And typically plant-based nutrition and getting rid of oils in diet. And so basically it all comes around it. And everybody talks about there's cholesterol and then there's inflammation. And is it either or, but it's both. And, so if you eat the, drive-through food, then certainly you get cholesterol and saturated fat and salts, but you also get inflammation. Your gut bacteria basically grow, whatever bacteria grow in your gut is basically what you're feeding it. So if you feed it decaying animal products as it kind of slithers through your intestines, then you select for a certain bacteria. And if you feed it more fiber, like a Kenyan would run on, you feed it, or a Tarahumara Mexican, you feed it a different bacteria. And those bacteria are basically the control tower for your immune system. So what you eat actually turns on your inflammation or your anti-inflammation. So you can have a bad, so people that have a family history like I do, bad genes, so to speak, you don't have to turn them on. This guy talks, it's like having a hand grenade in your closet. You don't have to pull the plug necessarily. But if you eat, then certain things you actually pull the plug, but there are other things you can eat to keep it in the closet more. And so, and that's basically, through plant-based nutrition. And so that's how we've took people that are older that have had bypass and stents and, made them walk without pain. And now I'm taking people and getting them to run marathons. Wow. So they've been with chest pain and had their stents and had them blocked off. And now we're getting them to run again. And it's not just the running's part of it, the fun part, but it's the nutrition, which is the hard part. So and that really is the hardest part for these, because everybody wants to, running is fun. You're flying in the air. I forget, there's somebody out there that talks about the difference between running and walking is that your feet are both in the air at sometimes running. And there's that sensation of flying, even though it's slow, but so it's fun and we want to do it. And we think if we exercise, we can outrun our genetics perhaps, or outrun whatever we have at aid stations or before or after. And, I heard a vet, and a veterinarian said it best when she said, you can give dogs, you can feed them anything and they'll survive for a while, but to make them thrive, they have to have the proper nutrition. And that's just like it is with humans. We can give you till you're 30, anything. You can put anything in, and the majority of people will do okay. Some won't, but the majority of people will do okay. But after that, then game on, it starts becoming more of, the garage is full, so to speak, and how can we keep ahead of the process? There's a little tsunami chasing us down the path, and can you run fast enough to outdo it? So I just thought that, again, we've done a couple. There's an ultra in Mendocino, 50K. Sid Garza Hillman runs it out there. It's a plant-based marathon that they actually, everything is all the aid stations. They have burritos, and their beans and burritos and rice and all that kind of stuff. And more of the ultras I'm seeing have options like that, something different to eat. I just heard a guy ran, I can't remember the name of it, but they were talking about, having different options. But I think it's kind of important. It's Italian. Vinny, the Italian cat, will go anywhere. Important to bring up to people that that it doesn't have to be. Your buddy mentioned on the podcast that he was his doctor gave him clearance to run a half marathon, and he was worried about maybe the veins exploding. That doesn't happen.
Okay.
They do, but they can clot off because they're gravity fed. So so when you put when they bypass a vein from your aorta down to where the blockage was, it is basically gravity fed, as opposed to your normal arteries that little coronary arteries normally have little muscles in them that pump the blood.
Oh, wow.
So when they're gravity fed, and again, there's valves in them, they're made for blood to go, or all of a sudden you're reversing the direction, so to speak. But they're going to clot easier. And so if there's a competitive flow, one side's better than the other, then that can clot off. The other thing is when they're kinked. So sometimes they're put in, sideways, so to speak, and they're not, you can't really see that well. So until he's run a while, that's one to see whether or not it stayed open, it didn't kink, and all those other things was the main reason that his doctor wanted to keep him at a half. But other than that, there's no reason to keep him at a half, other than the fact that if he has some scar tissue and irregular heartbeats. But, to me, again, in that rehab, people always do, the fitter you are, there's no level of fitness, which is okay, you can't get it, you can't help your heart anymore. That doesn't exist. Every study that's shown has continued to go up. The more fit you are, the better it is for your heart. But again, it doesn't keep things from clotting off due to either inflammation and or plaque type buildup. And the bypass, I think you said correctly, it bypassed the problem. So if there's a 90% blockage, it bypassed that 90% blockage, but it didn't change the fact that he puts plaque in his arteries everywhere. So that process keeps going on unless you do some change. And you kept saying, change your diet. Did you change, what'd you do different? What'd you do different? And at one point he's like, yeah, we're trying to eat healthier. And then the shoe dropped when he said, you said, what'd you do after the race? And you went and had crab cakes and French fries. I was like, and like, no, I can't do that, and, but again, it's like, nobody talks about it. Most physicians don't talk about it either. They just like, I fixed you, you go do what you need to do. And if it blocks up again, we'll fix you again. I have people around town that say the same thing to patients. And it doesn't, it doesn't need to happen. And, it's like, I was listening, and it's scary. It really is scary, especially when you're getting to the age group where people are dropping because of the, of heart disease and things.
It was good to see him out walking after it happened, he would walk, his wife would, or then when he started running, his wife would ride the bike alongside him. And he's just incrementally, he's out there, and I think it's great. I'm glad he's still with us, but it was a big scare because he's got 3 kids. I mean, it wasn't, that I guess, I haven't had that situation, but I think it really makes you think, where are you in life? And, it's a big scare. You got a lot of people depending on you. And on the other situation, we got some information the other day that the person might be on a transplant list. I mean, I didn't get an update. That's even scarier.
Right.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
There's nothing. I trained at a transplant hospital at the University of Pittsburgh, and there's nothing better than your original equipment. I don't care if it's your knees or your hips or your heart or whatever, but the original equipment is by far the best you're ever going to get. And fighting to keep that is so important. And there's a lot you can turn the clock back with. And that's the message that we're trying to get out, is that, you can turn back this disease and go from, we take people off their medications, we reverse their diabetes, their cholesterol goes, get them off medications. And it's not through the exercise. The exercise, there's been lots of studies that have shown that if you're going to have a heart attack and you were a runner, you're going to do better than a guy that had a heart attack that wasn't a runner. But it's not going to necessarily protect you from. It may delay it a few years. I think, if I had to guesstimate, unless Jeff Galloway had the vaccine, and that may have led to a myocarditis, which I don't know. But if it was just a traditional old heart disease, he probably outrun it by, 10 years, 15 years by being in good shape. But, it did catch him. But, again, it's never too late to turn back the clock, and the plaques actually go away. And one of the things we talk about is collateral circulation. So, your buddy had, 3 or 4 bypass grafts put in, but between those major arteries in the heart, there are a bunch of little spider web arteries that connect everything, just like side streets, and there's 2 main roads, or so to speak. Okay. And so when you change your nutrition, and it's basically, we're talking plant-based nutrition, you actually open up all these little collateral vessels. And so people that have blockages, doesn't really matter, because you open up all these other channels and blood gets through just as good. So, wow. I had a lady in my office today, is 85, and she wants to run her 2nd marathon. She did her first one.
Oh my goodness.
She did her first one at 80, and she didn't have any heart. She does have some heart disease, but not she had valvular heart disease.
That's super. Wow.
Yeah, and she's doing 5Ks at 85. She's doing 5Ks at 45 to 47 minutes. Run, walk.
Hey, whatever it takes.
But I think running is a great place. I think, again, like you said, through COVID, I was glad to hear that your group stayed together. I think that that's so important, to get out and get good microbes and to maintain that social experience and outdoor activity. I think that's one place, especially in ultras. We did a swim run event, which was a trail in November, and then we did an ultra here, a 50K where were we in? No, we were in Utah. I forgot where we were. It all looks the same when you go out west. 50K in Zion. And everybody was it was a great experience. Everybody was out happy, and running in the woods, and nobody was all worried. And I think that the ultra community has kept its head screwed on better than any community that I know.
Yeah, I had mine canceled. That was supposed to be last weekend. I started getting a suspicious feeling about it when I couldn't find the website anymore. I understand why. I was disappointed. I did get my money back. I wanted to run this trail that links up Williamsburg, Virginia, and then Richmond. The irony is that my wife did a cycling event on it just a few earlier in May. Same route. They had, I guess they call them aid stations for the cyclists, and anyway, it's the director's choice not to do it. There might have been some other issues there. So that was going to be my big race, and so I just kind of abandoned that. I'm going to do our local Misery half that they've renamed the Ashland half. It's no longer the Patrick Henry half, I guess. There's renaming of stuff, a lot of that going on. But I'll do a couple half marathons. I'm going to try to be a pacer for the Richmond half because it's a half marathon that costs $90. Just think that's a little much, but I'll find a long race next year. I'll get back in gear, and I think things are starting to open up again. Well, I will say though, I think this first couple of weeks after, we were, I guess, quote, locked down in Virginia, we still went out on Saturday mornings, and you kind of wonder what people think of it because everybody's reacting a little bit different, and I'm sensitive to that, but we're still free citizens. I'm going to run down the street.
Well, I think, I've actually, just kept saying that there's no better place that you can be than outside. And I've said it from the get-go, and now we're starting to, there's a lot of data that you can't get COVID being outside. I guess if you're, right on top of somebody for an hour or 2 hours, and, you might, they're sick, you might be able to get it, but other than that, there's just no way you can run and get anything. And there's a thing called exercising your immune system as well. When you go out and you're around people and kids and things, your body gets exposed to things and your immune system reacts and you get protection. You don't necessarily get sick. And when people stay hovered up in their houses and don't go out, they're not exercising their immune system at all. They're just staying inside with the germs that they have inside their house, and that's about it. And besides going, crazy in a lot of other ways, their immune system is taking a hit for it that way. And there's nothing more, better than you can do it, again, to get a better immune system. I mean, you've done a lot of races. I mean, how many times have you been really sick training for an ultra? Very rarely. How many people do you know that gets, I mean, I've got a couple of flus here and, but it's mainly because, I get myself in situations that I, probably shouldn't have been in, but no worse than, I mean, for the most part, I'm much healthier running than I would be not running. And I think that there's, it's good for your head. It's good for people's psyche. Certainly, even with, again, your friend in heart disease, it's been shown that, one of the things associated with a bad outcome is depression. And when people, you have something you love taken away from you and you have this brush with death, it's not, not that hard to see that people can get depressed. And, running's one of those things, those positive endorphins go along with that as well. So
yeah,
I think it's, a must that, you kind of keep getting out and doing things. And again, the trails you couldn't find a better place. It's one thing, running down the street, but the trails are really important. Do you do your weeks during the week? Do you run on the roads or the trails?
A little bit of a mix, but when I say trails, it's more of a linear kind of trail. So we have a park near us that's about 3 miles from where I live that has more of your trails and windy trails in the woods that go up and down. There's a flat section of the park where a lot of people like to ride mountain bikes because you can kind of get a lot of speed and go around these curves. But people run and walk them out there too. I love just being able to go out the house and run from the house. And there are some trails I can get on, but they're not single track kind of things that might be wide enough for, one's an old railroad trolley line. It's a linear trail, about half mile. And then there's some other stuff that goes through the woods, but they're wider. So I do a little bit of both. I'll try to hook them up. But as for going and running single track trails, that's kind of a rare thing because that requires me to get in the car.
How did you train for the hills of Strolling Jim? Because there's a fair amount of elevation there.
Yes, I did lots. We do have some hills. That's an actual. That's all a road race, believe it or not. It's some roads go up in the mountains and they're kind of narrow and they're pretty steep. I did lots of hill repeats and some of those. I remember the guy I was running with that day. He actually walked up one of the hills backwards. It was so steep. And there's some places to do hill repeats that are pretty good and relatively safe, and I do enjoy doing those. But Sterling Gym was that was more a humidity issue, to be honest with you. I think I walked up the hills. I didn't have any expectations. That was my I'd only done a couple ultras, and I kind of did that. I did that the week before I turned 40. Because it's about a 40 miler. Then they detoured it. It was like 42 or something. They detoured it because of a flood, and they didn't know how long the race was. That's not fair, but that's the way that guy runs things.
That sounds like something he would do. It's like, yeah, and he'd laugh about it probably, right?
Oh, he laughed right in your face, probably. If you don't like it, don't come.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I found. I mean, just the few ultras that we've done, it's like most of them are longer than what they say. They're never shorter, and nobody really cares. It's like, oh well,
Yeah, I'm out here all day anyway.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter. We finished the last race at Zion. We were sitting and people were staring at us, and I didn't catch on until it was, a little bit later, but I think they were staring at us because we looked old and, that we lived through it and things, It's like,
now, what state is that? Utah?
Utah. Yeah. It's really pretty.
It's called Zion. I'll look that
Zion,
up.
yeah. No, Zion National Park.
Okay.
There was a lot of, big old boulders that, that are above waist to high that there's just, there's, kind of crawling up as far as forget running, forget walking. It was crawling up and then, trying not to twist something or fall. There wasn't really a good place to fall. I just kept thinking, we have a group that runs here and, we run on the flat sidewalks of Florida and just about everybody's fallen down and hurt something. And it's like, geez, if the group was here, there'd be like a head injury or something.
Yeah, it's amazing how dangerous sidewalks can get. You don't take your foot up or you hit the crack and you hit the deck.
Yep. And everybody's talking and it's a little bit, like you say, it's a little bit dark and nobody, next thing you know, somebody's on the ground and you're just like, how'd that happen? But, well, I do appreciate you taking time to check in. I'll make sure I get in touch with you again another 10 years, see how you're doing. And
well, I thought it was kind of neat that I've met a few people that have listened to that I've kind of, quote, met through the podcast over the years, and meeting somebody in person or even over, it's just so cool because there's so many people that are just really interested in the same thing, running long, and the people that you meet and, different ideas that you get while you're doing that. And the podcast is really, I've met some very, very interesting people along the way. I've even met a guy in New Zealand. I've talked to him over video, down under Dave. In fact, he's met my whole family over video. We all talked to him. He's just a real nice guy. And I think he had some heart issues that he had to contend with. And his doctor doesn't want him to run, but so far, and, that's kind of his hobby. And so he's had to deal with that. And he wrote a book. He's got a digital book or something. I'll have to look that up. And he has a lot to say, but no, I appreciate it. I appreciate your advice. And I did stop eating some of that food after you emailed me and said, you got to stop that if you want to keep on going. If that comes from a doctor, then I'm going to listen. That's for sure.
Well, it may be a crazy doctor, but, I like to see everybody stay out there and running, and I don't want to have to stop and do CPR or anything. So,
well, I think you're right. I think some runners do think, and I'm one of them, that think, I'm out there running, 25, 30 miles a week training for a marathon. I can kind of eat whatever I want. And I've learned that you can't. I mean, it doesn't do you any good if you do.
No, you can eat right through it. When I have members come in and they'll say, I can't believe I'm not losing any weight. I'm walking a mile or two a day. And it's like, listen, I can gain weight training for a marathon, so you can eat right through it. It's not that hard.
No doubt. No, I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my opinions on some of the things that you were asking about. And like I told you in the emails, that I think some of my opinions are based on a little bit of myth. So I'm glad to learn. I learned a lot from what you were saying, so I appreciate your time as well. Well,
I like I said, I enjoy listening to your podcast too. It's very entertaining, and I learned something, and it's just it's nice to hear. It's like you say, it's nice to hear people having fun and run, and your buddies, and you're doing a good thing. So keep it up.
It's nice of you to say. Sometimes I need to hear a little bit of something like that to get me out there and get another show out. So I appreciate that. It was real nice of you to say that.
Keep them coming. I'm still listening. After all these. All right. Take care.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So I assume after that podcast, you're all looking for a 50K or a 50 mile to sign up for, because everybody wants to see what they can do to the bottom of their feet. We didn't talk about how he prevents it, but he did have a podcast on preventing, and it's basically heat, friction, and being dry. So if you can keep your feet dry and you can keep them relatively cool, and they're not rubbing, then your feet do much better. I like the toe socks and ninjas, Exoskin socks. But you have to find out what works for you to keep your feet dry and to keep them from rubbing on your shoes, and the right shoes. And some of the socks are better wicking than others as far as going through the water and things like that. So those are things that people experience the further that they run. I always tell people that you really don't know how your shoes feel or your clothes feel until you hit about 15 miles, and then then you start to find out what's rubbing the wrong way. So if you want to hear more from Dave, going over to Ashland. Dave, Running in the Center of the Universe is his podcast. It's really good. He's been doing it, again, for quite some time. I want to remind you that Addie Meinerich, registered dietitian, and I are having our third Zoom conference June 16th from 5:30 to 8. So you can go over to drdulaney.com, DoctorDulaney.com, and purchase tickets for that. They're $25. We will be making 6 different summertime fun foods so that you can get ideas what to do for barbecues, family reunions, how to eat healthy on your vacation, things that you can pick up at a condo or a timeshare that you can make for the whole family to enjoy. And we're going to have desserts as well as salads as well as entrees. So we're going to do a couple burger recipes. We're going to do a couple salads, a couple sides, and again the desserts. And so you can pick up tickets over there. We're going to be live on Zoom on June the 16th. But if you buy a ticket, then you also have access for a week later via email or via the website to be able to watch it at your convenience. We will be doing a question and answer segment following as well as during the event. If you haven't been to one of these events, Addie and I just flip back and forth. She makes something, I make something, and we talk about the nutritional value and give you some tips and techniques, talk about health and wellness, and answer your questions as they come in, or at the end, we have a live chat going on. And then we're also willing to answer questions for that next week. So you kind of have us in your pocket for a week for that $25 for any questions you have. We're going to send you the slides, the recipes. So you have all that at your disposal. So going over to drdulaney.com and get your tickets for this. I look forward to meeting you. I get a lot of questions and a lot of feedback as far as, we're going to a family reunion and they didn't have anything for me to eat, or we're having a picnic and I'm going to cheat and there's nothing, it's just nothing satisfies me. So I think that I want to debunk all those myths because you can have a nice party and still be healthy and not gain a bunch of weight or go into heart failure or have a heart attack at the party. And the idea is to be active in the summertime and to be able to get together and do things, but not pay for them with your nutrition or your diet or your health. And it's not just about getting skinny for the summer, but it's about improving your health every day of your life that you have. And I think that's huge. Again, I'll go back to all this mess with COVID over the past, year and a half. Nobody talks about the importance of being healthy at baseline. And if you're healthy at baseline, you have a chance, you have a good chance of taking on any virus or any bacterial infection or any kind of an injury and doing well from it. So if your body's not inflamed, you're in good physical condition, there's not much that can take you down. So despite all the scare tactics, the best thing you can do for yourself is to optimize your health and wellness. And yes, you can survive on hot dogs and corn dogs and potato chips all summer long, perhaps if you're young, but as you get older, you will not be thriving on that food. And there is more and more evidence to suggest that your cholesterol in midlife may dictate your risk of heart disease, but also of Alzheimer's. So get healthy now. Don't put it off until you're already sick. Don't let the shoe drop. Live to see grandkids, great grandkids, and have a good time while you're doing it. So join us June 16th. Get your tickets now, and love to meet you. Thanks for listening.